Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa. The contract discussions are heating up, and we're breaking down all the dynamics surrounding them today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply.
Joe, how was Twisters?
Brother, we didn't get there. We didn't get to the movies yet. Yeah.
I think I saw it had the biggest disaster film opening weekend of all time.
I'm very excited to see it. But we didn't make it out. It's difficult when you got a couple of kids, man.
Sure. I just thought for sure. I mean, you brought up Twisters probably 5 times before it came out.
I know. We'll get there at some point.
You guys be contributing to a record-setting performance for a disaster film.
Yeah, we'll contribute hopefully this week if we can get there. I know it comes highly reviewed. I'm anxious to see it. I mean, this will only be the second time, assuming this happens.
Time you and your wife went to the movies?
Second time ever. Yeah. Together, to go see a movie.
Matinee, right? Like the dinner time or evening movie going experience, the going to the theater is kind of crazy right now anyway, but I'd much rather go at 11 o'clock when nobody's there.
Yeah.
Right?
So
first show.
That's the plan. We're going to get to an 11 o'clock showing while my 4-year-old's at preschool. And now we got the 3-month-old. We can just get grandparents to watch her for like 2 hours.
Right.
We'll be set. So we got to figure out what day this week we can go do that.
Okay. Well, very good. You got a plan. And that's always the first part of it. It's having a plan.
I felt like that was a segue. Having a plan.
Well, all right, go ahead.
Well, that for you, it was we're talking about these 3 young, sort of young. Dak Prescott's north of 30, but everyone else, Jordan Love,
prime of his career. The reason I didn't make the segue, I'm going to be completely honest, I'm pulling up the movie theaters in Concord.
Thank you. They're 11 a.m. There's plenty of 11 a.m. shows.
Yeah, there's the AMC has an 11 a.m.
Yeah, the Concord Mills.
Oh, the IMAX, you got to wait till 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't need IMAX or special.
The Regal's got an 11:30. Synergy Dine-In Cinemas has a 10 a.m. kickoff.
Okay, we get some shrimp and grits to go with our Twister.
3 young quarterbacks, kind of next.
Yeah,
in the quarterback contract extension. We're looking at the market as a whole. I know this has been a talking point that's been exhausted by just about every daytime television program on the big 4-letter networks. But we really haven't gone there. And I was kind of looking forward to us getting into these 3 individual players who have unique sets of questions, right? When you consider Jordan Love, and last year was his first year as a unquestioned starter and finished the year really strong, but still a small sample size. I think there's plenty to be excited about what the play looked like. We ranked him as a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I know that's apparently too low for Packers fans, but let's start with Jordan Love. We'll get into each one of the profiles of these guys as we go. Jordan Love's up first for us.
My leading thought with Jordan Love, and this is going to carry over to pretty much how I view all of these situations, is I think it's important for us to establish that you're paying quarterbacks for what they're going to do and not what they've done. So what they've done is helpful in forecasting what they are going to do, but you're paying them for future production.
Mm-hmm.
I think all 3 of these situations, we're focusing in on Jordan Love, they've had the opportunity to assess what this player is. I know for Jordan Love, the sample size is very, very small, relatively speaking. But did you see enough last season that tells you this is our guy? We want to build everything around him, because you need that clarity. To me, for the direction of what you're going to be as a football team, you need that clarity at quarterback. And if I'm Green Bay, I understand that this deal is never going to be less expensive than it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan Love wants a contract extension. It certainly feels like that. I think everybody wants this to get done right now. It makes sense. Again, I know the small sample size is small. I don't care. I saw enough to tell me what the future sample size is going to look like, and that really intrigues me. But I wanted to draw that, come to that conclusion that it's important for us to know what they've done is important. These contracts are about what they are going to do.
Yeah. And I think that's where Green Bay's situation is in a unique place when you consider payroll on that side of the ball, right? We are not paying a premier wide receiver like Miami is paying two of, and Dallas is apparently prioritizing trying to get CD's contract done. Even the offensive line, like David Bakhtiari was your hallmark investment. I know Elton Jenkins is a really good value because he can play tackle, but you got a lot of young guys on the offensive line, guys on rookie contracts. Getting the chance to put this piece in place first makes it a really attractive thing for the Packers to do, because now you can build out and tool everything else around it, and you can proactively do that before the cost and the price continues to go up.
Huge talking point, Kyle Crabbs, that you just brought up there. And I want to expand on that. The offense that the Packers have, the least expensive offense in the NFL. They have $78 million allocated to offensive players. That's more than $100 million less than the Browns, than the Rams. The Chiefs are $170 million offense. The Cowboys have $158 million offense. The Packers are at $78 million. Everything that you're going to be, the blueprint is tied to Jordan Love and how those cap dynamics are going to fall. And you need to find out, right? Like, the part of the appeal with having all these young receivers and tight ends is figuring out who the most important ones are, because there's going to be some decisions to make. Get that quarterback in place. Then you're going to feel good about, all right, who are we paying from here?
All right, so let's assume Jordan Love gets his contract. And I think if you and I had to guess, we'd probably say Jordan Love gets his first out of these three guys. Say he gets 56. Okay, say he gets the market reset contract. He gets the PR win. He's with Athletes First. You can go on the Athletes First page, and on their home landing page is like the Monopoly sign, and they have a big thing about like number one contracts in the NFL, right? Like, it's a big deal. Like, they love that. You would have to assume if you're paying a quarterback based on what he's going to be moving forward, and you look at Trevor Lawrence getting 55 kind of threw everything for a big loop, right? Because I think you look at the resume of Trevor Lawrence and the questions that exist there on a lot of different fronts, and you feel better about Jordan Love. So you'd expect he's going to come in over that. Say he gets 56. Percentage of cap at time of signing is something I've really kind of explored as far as the value of these contracts, because yes, quarterback contracts, there's inflation, but is the inflation keeping up with the inflation of the actual salary cap? If he signed for 56, that would be 21.9% of the cap for the annual average of the contract. That would still be behind Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, and Dak Prescott's old contract, relative to what the cap is now and a $56 million annual average against this year's cap versus what the annual average was of those contracts when they were signed. So it really does change the picture of how big the investment is when you consider the growth rate of the quarterback salary versus the growth rate of the cap.
And that's why I think timing is such an important piece of this conversation. If you want to extend criticism towards any of these teams for the amount of money that they're going to pay to these quarterbacks, well, then they should have got these deals done months ago, because all of them are pushed up by, like you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence, by the Jared Goff deal. That's what makes these dollar amounts what they are. But that's the world that you live in, right? You waited, and now it's going to be more expensive. And so that's where the criticism falls. The numbers are going to be where the numbers are. They're your guy. They're your guy. I don't take as much exception with what those APYs are going to be. And I think tying it to percentage of cap is the right way to do it. But that's where I think there could be a bigger picture conversation that comes out of all of this. And that when you know they're your guy, get the freaking deal done, get it done, because it only goes up from there.
So I have a comment on that, but we can get into that after the break because it's a nice segue to our next guy.
So be sure to stick with us. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And they got some fun props on the quarterbacks we're discussing today. I'll let you know some of my favorites. Jordan Love. They got him at plus 120 to top 4,000 passing yards during the regular season. Kind of like that. They also have some good value on the MVP odds. They have him at plus 1,400 to be the NFL MVP. I'm sure all of Wisconsin is flocking to that right now and are going to become quite wealthy off of hitting on that. Dak Prescott at plus 1,000 to lead the NFL in passing yards, plus 350 to top 4,500 passing yards. Those feel pretty good. And as for Tua, they got him at plus 420 to top 4,500 passing yards, which feels like an easy over to hit, assuming everyone's healthy. How about this one? Plus 1,100 to lead the league in passing yards. So if you want to check out all of that and more, head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
Poor guy did it last year. He's 4-figure odds to do it again.
Right? Might not be a bad idea to check that one
out. So your statement at the end, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, is if you know the guy is your guy, get the deal done. I want to ask you, do you think it's a coincidence that the last two guys that have yet to sign that we've started this show with in Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa, do you think it's a coincidence that they're both athletes first guys?
No.
That's certainly it. If there's a focus on maximizing the opportunity of the player, which every team has, right? Or every agent and every player has, they want to maximize their opportunity. Having the opportunity to have two separate quarterback contract negotiations taking place simultaneously and kind of having with your agency a better understanding of kind of what the landscape looks like and knowing that, hey, maybe we want a little bit more leverage because this guy started 18 games in his NFL career, or I guess 20 if you include the playoffs. Or, hey, Miami's price point was too low when we got this thing started. We really want to try to get as much leverage as we can. Why don't we let Jared Goff sign? Why don't we let Trevor Lawrence sign? Why don't we point to Trevor Lawrence after he signs his contract and say, hey, Tua's outperformed him statistically since he came into the league in every major passing statistic, whether that's completion percentage over expectation, passer rating, turnover-worthy plays, actual turnovers, passing yards, wins. I know Trevor Lawrence got the playoff win, but he threw 3 picks in and they were down 27 points at halftime. Like, if that guy's getting 55, why are you offering us what you're offering us?
So we're getting into Tua now.
Yes.
This is my lead thought on Tua.
Time out.
Okay. I got the one word out. Here we go.
Dak Prescott, represented by Todd France. Athletes first.
Oh, yeah. All right. So we got a heck of a trend here, Kyle Crabbs.
Go ahead.
This is the challenging thing for Tua and the Dolphins. The beginning of Tua's tenure with Miami spoiled their entire opportunity to get the maximum value out of him during his rookie contract. And that's unfortunate. It is what it is. Where it becomes a little bit complicated to me is that I feel like Tua of these quarterbacks is the most dependent, right, on the situation around him. And he's in a great situation to produce. One of my favorite things in listening to your conversation with Kurt Warner, I'm not sure if you said it or Kurt said it, was we don't have to have the conversation about him being in a different situation because this is the situation. Mm-hmm. But he's also the guy that I do think the situation matters the most for. And because of that, and the dollar amount that's going to be assigned to bringing back Tua on a long-term extension, you now, of course, with the amount of money he's going to get, you reduce your opportunity to have the best possible supporting cast around him. Mm-hmm. And I think that Miami did really well in these last couple of years under Mike McDaniel and how they've surrounded Tua. But that becomes a little bit difficult moving forward. Do I think that the Dolphins should pay Tua? Yeah, I do. I think the easiest thing you can do in the NFL is get worse at quarterback. And I think you have to love the way things have gone and how they're trending. But I do think that the complicating factor for me is that now it becomes harder to win with Tua when he's the guy that you feel like needs the most around him.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people have a hard time with in reconciling is Tua is perceived to be a low physical tools quarterback, right? He doesn't have the athleticism and extended playability of a lot of the leaders in the league in that regard. He doesn't have the arm strength that is the prototypical first off the bus Madden style quarterback that we're going to run and fade 20 yards back and still throw 50-yard bombs, right? Like that's, and you see that show up on tape. So the question is, what is the growth potential for this player? And that was another thing I asked Kurt Warner was, this is a player who doesn't have, it'd be different if you were Jordan Love and everybody knew how physically talented you were when you came out of Utah State. But the question was, how well could you be molded to the system that you're going to play in? Well, Tua's had an offense that's been tailored personally to all of his personal strengths. And that's what good coaching does. But the question is, if we pay the contract and the value of the players around you has to be diminished, how much of that can you make up the difference of if you don't have the physical ability to do? And I think for Tua, the bright side is you can look at somebody else that just joined this $50 million a year club in Jared Goff. Mm-hmm. And you've seen his maturation because all of the same things that the detractors put the labels on with Tua, before it was Tua as the punch bag for him, who was the punching bag for it?
Goff.
It was Jared Goff.
Yeah.
System quarterback who has Sean McVay tell him to play and tell him who to throw the ball to in 15 seconds before the snap and can't extend plays and has to work within the pocket and blah, 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 blah. Right. And one thing I did for Touchdown Miami, which is my Substack for long form Dolphins content, is I did research on top 10 defenses against the pass the last 2 years and how every member of the $50 million club at quarterback performed against them. Jared Goff, as recently as last year, had the worst one-season sample size of EPA per play facing top 10 defenses in the NFL. This year, he was the best. And some of that is the maturation of the player going to a new system, still having a good play caller around him, but becoming a more efficient player. This kind of gets into where you can start to talk about Dak Prescott because Dak's 32, right? These other two guys are coming off rookie contracts. They've still only had a handful of seasons of starts. And for Tua specifically, he's coming into year 5. The first 2 years were really bad with the offensive infrastructure that they had. There were more completions to be found in this offense than what he took. And it's continuing to find the right balance of getting up to the line of scrimmage. Cam Newton talked about this with Jordan Love's favorite play that Jordan Love put on the whiteboard on his show just last week. And progressions is you get up to the line of scrimmage and you see what the route leverages are and what the coverage presentation is. And by process of elimination, you understand, okay, I'm axing these routes in the progression based off of the coverage.
Yeah.
And that takes time on task, right? And the more you have time on task in the same system, the more efficient you get at it. And I think for Tua, that's where the growth opportunities are. If I were to make my point on where can he get better to help make up the difference, y'all had underneath routes open and you didn't take them because you wanted to try to get the ball to your best players. And that maturation for a quarterback who's going to be 26 this year, sometimes it just takes those guys a little bit longer to do it. And just look at how long it took Jared Goff to get to that place with a guy who had a lot of the same critiques when he was 26 years old.
A couple more thoughts on Tua and the Dolphins. I think one thing that Miami is in good position for is understanding how to build around Tua. I think that's an important thing that they've gained clarity on. And I mean, look at what they were able to do this offseason, furthering their depth at running back, adding a tight end like Jonnu Smith, who I think will help be a more attractive, work the football down option and have him create after the catch, and then getting them a guy that can be a route winner as a third receiver in Odell Beckham. So I think that you've seen those strides happen. But I do think that with Miami, and part of their, I think the decisions that they made this offseason had the extension for Tua in mind. If they didn't plan on bringing back Tua, well, then they do bring back, I think, Hunt, Wilkins, guys like that. I think you're seeing sort of the consequence of what I began this conversation with is like, well, where do we make our concessions to have a more complete roster? Because we feel like we might need that around Tua. And the last thing that I'll say about this whole situation that I think favors Miami is that Tua is most valuable to Miami. I think that there's other teams that if Tua were to become available should be interested and would be interested, but his number one value is to the Miami Dolphins, which I think helps Miami. Now you got to take care of the guy and all that for sure, but I think that's where he's going to find the most value.
And I think that's why this deal is not done, because you have, from the agency perspective, they're saying, look, he led the league in passer rating 2 years ago. He played all 17 games, answered that question before he led the league in passing yards this year. So what else do you want from a production standpoint? And Miami's perspective is, well, we know how much we've tailored what we do to all of his strengths. Any team that would try to do that elsewhere, that's a 2-3 year process
100%
to change all that out. Right.
Yep.
So why are we going to ultimately bid against ourselves? And unfortunately, this isn't a social experiment. The saying that Tua had, the market is the market. That's really how it works.
Yeah.
Like Jared Goff was the first quarterback to sign an extension as a proven starter that didn't reset the market in like the last 5 quarterback contracts. Right. It was like Trevor Lawrence tied Joe Burrow, and then the Jared Goff thing happened, but then Joe Burrow was last and he was 55, and then it was Justin Herbert and he was 52. And then it was Lamar Jackson and Justin was 52.5. And then it was Lamar at 52 and Jalen Hurts was 51. And it's like, that's the quarterback contracts that came out in the last 18 months. And every one of them in succession, except Jared Goff, reset the market. So you can have the debate about, well, we don't want to pay. You shouldn't pay him just because other people are paying him. And theoretically, that's true. But again, this is not a social experiment of putting your foot down and being the team that has the principle to not pay the guy. If this is your guy, and every other personnel move and the guys they've lost tells you this is your guy, time to push play. But I think there's been incentive from their representation to wait and gain as much leverage as they can.
Kyle, I'm glad we saved Dak for last, because I think there's a key component with Dak that's different than these other quarterbacks. We'll talk about that here on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with us. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. In fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours on LinkedIn, and 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Dak Prescott.
The key difference in Dak Prescott versus Jordan Love and Tua Tagovailoa is I feel like Dak Prescott has every ounce of leverage.
Yes.
Every single ounce of leverage. Obviously, he's always turns 31 this week on the 29th. So happy birthday coming up here to Dak. but he can't be tagged, right? He took like a very small pay cut to make sure that he can't be tagged. And so if I'm Dak Prescott and I lived through a lot of Dallas Cowboys football through the years, and I think what's interesting about Dallas is I think they have the most unique combination of moves that I absolutely love combined with moves that I absolutely hate. Right. I mean, like sometimes the extensions, you're like, really? We thought Terrence Steele and Jalen Smith were the priorities here. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to push things with Ceedee Lamb? Ezekiel, let's give him the bag while we're trying to, it's all been goofy to me at times. Well, simultaneously, I love some of their draft picks. I do love some of their moves that they make. So it's really goofy to me. And if I'm Dak Prescott, I am leveraging everything. I want to see what you do with Ceedee. I want to see what you do with Micah Parsons. I want to see this play out a little bit because I can pick my team in some ways after the season. And maybe that is that I want to stick in Dallas and I like the trajectory here. You know, who knows? Like maybe he doesn't like McCarthy. Maybe he's going to be fired. There's a new who knows? But if you're Dak Prescott and not only do you have that leverage, but you know this quarterback class coming up, not necessarily going to be moving the needle in a big way.
Right.
I think if I'm Dak, I'm more willing than any of these other quarterbacks to play out this season and say, I'll figure this out next March.
Well, and he's already has so much leverage on this situation because of the other contracts that Dallas needs to try to get done. They kind of need Dak to move to help him do it, right? Like you either need to get the extension done because of how much of it is on the books, or I think it's $40 million in void money that they would take on next year. But he's got a big cap hit that they haven't been able to do anything with because he's in the last year of his deal and they've prorated that out a couple of times. So, unlike the other two guys too, you mentioned the leverage that Dak has because of the salary cap situation that Dallas is in this year, because they can't franchise tag him and run things back. This is the only one, if I were the player, I would not be bothered if I didn't get it done. Right? The other two guys, younger guys, you want to have that long-term security going into what's going to be competitive seasons for you, where Dallas and Dak, the other side of the coin is maybe this has played itself out. And because I can't get tagged, I know I've got a big enough body of work. I've started 114 games in the NFL. I led the league in touchdown passes last season. They have evolved to put so much of the weight on the offense onto me as compared to what I was when I started. He's kind of his maturity works in his advantage in that way. And this is not Kirk Cousins off a torn Achilles hitting the free agent market, right? Like this is still a potential long-term answer for a team at the position who's in mentally the prime of his career, but physically hasn't hit the decline yet. And I think that's where, knowing I can't get tagged, knowing the gains and losses of the roster, knowing how I kind of have you in a bind, I'm sitting back. I'm enjoying the show. I'm going to go out and play my best football that I can this year. And I don't know that Dallas would put a dollar amount in front of me that would get me to sign before the season starts. I'd probably be inclined to and want to just play it out.
Situation for me, if I'm Dak Prescott, is everything. I mean, this season could bottom out. They fire Mike McCarthy. Who knows? Mm-hmm. And maybe you want that. Maybe you know what I mean. Maybe you don't want to play with Mike. Who knows what those dynamics are?
The hiring process becomes a sales pitch to Dak.
Right.
Who do you want?
Plus what they did to you the last time we did the contract and the tag and all that. Like,
right.
I'm looking out for me if I'm Dak Prescott in this entire conversation. Like you mentioned, he turns 31. I guess this week. He's the type of quarterback that I think is going to age quite gracefully because I think he's changed so much as a player to really. I mean, he doesn't run the ball. He's had less than 50 rushing attempts like every year. He's not a dual threat quarterback. This is a guy that has become a lot smarter as a processor and really became everything's arm talent, right? Mm-hmm. Making good decisions, being accurate with the football. And you also kind of look at this and wonder, like, man, this is you're putting me in this position. Like, we got major questions across our offensive line. Like, why did you trade away Amari Cooper for a bag of balls? You know what I mean? That wasn't a bad contract for us. Like, you couldn't figure that out. I'd be kind of pissed off at some of the decisions that they've made around me that I want to go where I feel like I'm going to be in the best situation to, finish out my career.
So that's why we saved Dak for last too, because I think you stack them up in the order of operations and how we think it's going to unfold. And I think predictively Love, Tagovailoa, and Prescott will be the order that those guys sign their contracts. I think 2 of those 3 happen before the start of the season and potentially both this week. And what happens if Jordan Love signs and Tua gets to camp and doesn't have his deal and he doesn't do the 11-on-11 stuff like he didn't do in OTAs? He said, I'll throw 7-on-7, but I'm not going to do the team stuff. If that starts happening and you're Miami in a competitive window, I'd imagine that deal gets done pretty darn quick because they're going to want that settled going into preseason games and the start of the season.
And if you're Tua, that's the right play because this is your chance, bud. You did it. You were healthy. You put up the numbers. You're not as valuable to other teams. Force the hand.
Right.
And if I think if the Love deal does get done, that probably helps. Now, is it maybe escalated even more? Maybe so.
Probably. But I think the thing about that is because they're negotiating both of those situations within the same agency, isn't that kind of going to be baked into what they've been asking for in the first place? Like you as the representation of Tua aren't going to have the Jordan Love deal come through and get surprised on what it is because you work for the same agency.
Right. Yeah, they know. Man.
So I think that's the layer to all of this that's really interesting that I don't know that we've kind of ironed some of that out here, but I don't think it's incidental and it's very well played for an agency that's repping these guys. These are the top 3 prospective free agent quarterbacks next offseason. And here we are on July 22nd. None of them have new deals. You're looking at a quarterback class in the draft that you're very skeptical about. Who's your next in line in free agency to hit free agency at quarterback? And deadline spur action. And reports to camp come this week. So
dude, I was low-key a little bit nervous when we decided on this being the topic yesterday. The Love deal was going to get done. You know what I mean?
Well, let's hurry up and wrap it up.
Get this podcast published.
That's going to do it for us here today on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We are out of here.